record. So I've hit the record button. As an introduction, we like to acknowledge that our mission at Vose Library is to advance learning, inspire curiosity, enrich lives, and promote community. With that in mind, let me introduce our guests. Bob Sewell is a longtime organic apple grower and former president of Maine Organic Farmers and Growers. After preparing his fields organically for 2 years using the Rodale method, he planted 550 trees to create what is now the oldest certified organic orchard in Maine, still in operation. Besides farming, consulting, and mentoring young farmers, he speaks to groups around the state about his organic apple cider vinegar, which was voted Best of Maine in Down East Magazine in 2008, the only year they had a vinegar category. A few of the notable Maine restaurants which uses Bob's 3-year-old cold-aged vinegar include 4th Street and Vinland in Portland, Joshua's in Wells, Primo in Owl's Head, Nina June in Rockport, and Boynton McKay in Camden. It is also sold in many stores and co-ops in the Mid-Coast and in Portland. In the cookbook Vinegar Revival, Bob is mentioned in the acknowledgements. He's been written about in the Boston Globe, Bangor Daily Times, and was featured in the October 2017 Down East Magazine. He's also been written about in Michael Phillips' book, The Apple Grower. Without further ado, please help me welcome Bob Sewell and wife, Mia Mantello. Hello, everybody. Let me get this off the screen. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll put you guys in speaker view and you're on. It's all yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Deborah. And thank you everyone for coming to listen to our talk on vinegar, apple cider vinegar. And I'd like to do this in a number of stages because first I'd like to talk a little bit about the farm and then about the apple trees, the orchard, and a little about cider, and then really focus on the apple cider vinegar. And that'd be in like 3 parts: how to make vinegar, culinary uses of vinegar, and also folk medicine and medicinal aspects of organic apple cider vinegar. So this journey started in 1975 when I looked at this little piece of land up on the side of Levenseller Mountain, about a half a mile from the town roads, and ended up buying this woodlot that adjoined a dairy farmer's property, and he became kind of like my mentor. We really depended on each other for a number of years as he got older, and I didn't really have access to my place in the winter, so I'd park at his barn, but we would, you know.
And how did you get up here in the winter?
I skied.
Cross-country skiing with propane tanks on your back and groceries?
Sometimes. Really, the propane was only in the spring when I couldn't haul it on a toboggan, and that didn't happen often. I made better plans. But we, you know, I always had this thing about apple trees, and I was raiding all the old orchards that I could find around, and Willio and I became really good friends. I would take sauna with him. He was a Finnish dairy farmer. I'd help him harvest potatoes. So this was a great relationship. And then 1978, he decided that he was going to sell the farm and he wanted to sell the adjoining fields to me. And so that was an 8-acre hay field and 14 acres of blueberries. So about 22 acres total. And I wanted to buy it and I didn't have the available money. So he said, well, you know, you love apples, so I'll sponsor you with the Farm Home Administration, which is part of USDA. And, you know, you love apples, so why don't you plant an orchard? And I said, oh, that's a good idea. And so I went to USDA and I went into the director's office and noticed on the bulletin board up behind him, there was a letter from President Carter saying he wanted them to loan money to small part-time farmers. So they said, okay, you want 100,000? I said, no, 12,000, I can buy the land and buy my trees and I can handle the rest. And so that was kind of how the ball got rolling. It was like a $500 a year note at 5%. And that really got the ball rolling for me. This was a while ago, so things were a lot cheaper. Wouldn't be that today. So we spent 2 years, Willie-O helped me, plowing, harrowing, 6, 7 different cover crops. Got the soil up to where I wanted. It was through Rodale. I followed a recommendation he had in his book that he wrote on composting in 1957. It's a fascinating 1,400-page book if anybody's interested in reading it. And that really got the orchard started. And I wanted to do the orchard organically, and I wanted standard trees for longevity. I figured I'd do it for my retirement. So I talked to the main apple specialist and said, I want to grow organic and I want to do it on standard trees. And he says, well, you can't grow organic in Maine and I'm really not going to waste my time with you. So I said, okay, we'll just figure it out. Well, I'm good at pruning, I'm good at planting, I'm good at growing. I didn't know a whole lot about apples, but I figured you keep things clean, you take care of it. And 8 years later, because that's standard trees, we get our first crop, major crop, commercial crop. And I was really focusing, my whole idea was that apples are one of the highest sprayed fruits there is. And what do young children like the most? Applesauce, apple juice. So I figured my marketing wasn't going to be for fancy dessert apples. I wanted to focus on young families and have a pesticide-free fruit. Most of those pesticides were mimicking growth hormones in children, so it actually affects your sexual development and reproductive abilities. They say we're half the men that our grandfathers were because of this. So this was my input, and this was kind of my desire in figuring out what I could do with this. Over time, we also did organic apple cider vinegar, or apple cider, organic apple cider. So it was unpasteurized. And this wasn't a problem. We could sell it, didn't matter. We could wholesale it.
Can you speak to your markets? You sold at our peak, we sold from Bar Harbor area down towards Portland, and you'd have 2 delivery trucks going full every week during cider season.
And we actually would start our season by doing the Common Ground Fair. So we'd thin the orchard coming into the fair. We'd start like September 10th, and then by the 22nd, we would make roughly 1,500 gallons of cider, and we supplied pretty much the whole fair for 10, 12 years. But then USDA decided that they were going to change their regulations. Cider used to be its own classification. It's a medium that isn't friendly to pathogens. All forms of E. coli except for 157H cannot survive in cider. It's that unfriendly to pathogens. But they decided to throw us in with the juice regulations like orange juice and cranberry juice and all of that. And that's a whole different deal. So they had, you had to prove a 5 log reduction in pathogens. to be acceptable. Well, there's no place on the face of the earth that there's a 5-log reduction of pathogens. In the Arctic Circle, krill coming out of the ocean, that's like a 3-log reduction. So their mission is to sterilize food. My mission is living foods.
Do you
So-
want to speak to how you were visited, how you found out?
Well, they showed up at the door and
They is the FDA
the FDA
agents with badges on.
knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and they hold up an affidavit that said because of the 2003 Anti-Bioterrorism Act, they could search all my property, all my safes, all my records without a search warrant. But they were there to educate me. And so I'm pretty well educated. I had read the 90-page juice laws, and I knew they had me, but I said, okay, what's up? And they said, well, you're selling unpasteurized cider. And I said, there's no law against that. And they said, well, yes, there is. And I said, have you read your regulations? And they didn't say anything. So after the third time, they didn't answer me. I said, why don't you go and read your regulations and come back, and then we'll both be educated. And I knew they had me, but I just really felt, I felt it was just a very punitive way to deal with somebody. The way they did it. They showed their badges and they showed their affidavits, and they really didn't know what they were doing. So they came back and they knew what they were doing. So at that time, I was also making vinegar. I'd been playing with it for a couple of years. And so they said, you cannot sell wholesale cider anymore. I said, okay. They said, but you can sell retail cider off your farm or at farmer's market. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, we don't regulate retail. The state regulates retail. So the state allows me to sell my cider off the farm or at farmers markets. And I said, so then I can't sell my vinegar wholesale. They said, well, we don't have jurisdiction over vinegar. And I said, well, why not? And they go, well, that's a food. And I said, it's apple cider that's fermented. How does it go to a food? But anyways, that's what you're dealing with. So I can still sell my vinegar. And so we really decided at that point. They also made a law, the state did, that you couldn't use drops in cider anymore.
Drops being apples that have fallen to the ground.
Right.
Apples that are not picked from the tree, but are picked off of the ground.
And that's a whole nother discussion that I've had debates with. But anyway, so all our drops go into vinegar now, or we've actually are doing some hard cider. Brand that's converted into brandy.
So what we had to decide at that moment after the FDA came was, do we change our whole philosophy and what we believe in, and do we start to use heat and pasteurize our apple cider? And our belief is that once it's scientific, it's more than just a belief, but once you heat apple cider, you lose amino acids and you lose nutrients that make it a living food. Once you heat apple cider, it becomes apple juice. Apple juice is great, but it's not a living food like apple cider. So we had a few days of agony, and then we decided to not pasteurize. And that meant we lost essentially the ability to sell 95, 98% of the cider at the Common Ground Fair every year for every booth they were buying from us. And we lost the ability to sell to dozens of stores and restaurants from, Bar Harbor to Portland, but especially here in the Mid-Coast. And so we decided to give all of that up rather than to pasteurize. So, and that's when vinegar began to play a bigger part in what we produced.
And it's interesting, in an orchard, when you have a crop come in, a lot of apples fall. And you've got a crew, and you want that crew really focusing on the trees. Well, before this happened, half my crew's time would be cleaning up the orchard floor and then stripping the trees. After this happened, I decided I was just going to find a piece of equipment that picked the apples up off the ground, and my crew can just focus on the trees. And that, the second year that we did that was probably the heaviest crop we ever had. So even before the Common Ground Fair, which we were still selling at our booth and to the volunteers kitchen, because there's like 1,000 volunteers there, we would you know, have to get things going. Well, that second year I had this piece of equipment. Before the fair, we ended up doing 800 gallons of vinegar, which I would have never had the time to be able to do. We ended up doing 5,000 gallons of vinegar that year, that second year. That paid for this piece of equipment. It's like $26,000 piece of equipment. So, you know, you go, how am I going to pay for this? And then bingo, you know, you get lucky. You don't always get lucky.
Do you want to talk about the actual process of making apple cider vinegar?
Sure. So there's many different ways of doing vinegar. Commercially, what you're looking at, let's say you've got Bragg's or Spectrum that are very, very large companies. They don't grow their apples. They don't make their own cider. They buy concentrate from wherever they can get it. And then they turn that concentrate into vinegar through mechanical apparatuses. They have what they call
Mechanical acetator.
yeah, mechanical acetators, which are aerating and heating this. So over a matter of 8-9 weeks at the most, they've turned this into vinegar. Well, what we find is that process, it really speeds it up. I mean, you've already turned it into a concentrate, which means you had to heat it, and then you're reconstituting it, and then you're heating it again. You might only go to 80 degrees. Some of the processes do that, which isn't too bad. But what happens is there's over 230 micronutrients in apple cider. There's huge amino acids that are really important. There's vitamins. All those are affected by heat. So what we do is we take the cider, press the cider fresh, only fresh apples. We're not using apples that have been sitting in storage for 6-7 months, start to break down. They don't make good cider. I mean, they're not edible, so they use them for cider. That's why you get all that brown particulate in a lot of your cider, those apples that started to break down. So what we do is we use fresh apples. They're pressed once or twice a week for our vinegar, for our cider during season. Pump it in the 50-gallon barrels. And I can add mother from some of my old batches of vinegar. Or a lot of times you just let it go. There's 25,000 different yeasts on an apple in an orchard. So you've got this great natural selection of yeast. What's really interesting about yeast is that at 40 degrees, like in your refrigerator, the only yeast that will work is alcohol. That's why your unpasteurized cider that's in your refrigerator will turn to alcohol, and it gets all bubbly and it cuts the sugars. And a lot of old timers like to come up and, you know, they'll say, give me some of the fizzy stuff. And, you know, I might have some in the back, and, and, you know, and that takes about 10 days, 2 weeks with organic cider that hasn't been pasteurized for it to kick like that in the refrigerator. Well, it's also a great starter for vinegar because that's a really hardy yeast. 40 degrees, you know, a lot of things don't work well at 40 degrees. That works really well. So these colder temperatures, they create these yeasts that create mothers that have qualities to them that at 80 degrees, you just don't get that flavor. The fellows that are doing the brandy with us, that's what they did with our cider, is they fermented it at cold temperatures to get those rich flavors. And so that's really part of what really adds to the vinegar. Yes.
Can you describe what the mother is? On our bottle of vinegar, just so people know, it says Sewell cider vinegar and the mother. And I'm hoping I'm holding this correctly so you can see it in front of the camera. But most people need an explanation about what is the mother? Where does it come from? Where do I get one? Can I make my own vinegar? But anyway,
well, we all have one, but it's these mothers they're just there naturally. If you have cider, it's gonna have the yeast that creates a mother. But the mother is a pure protein that's created when the yeast starts eating the sugars and it builds. And I have a bunch of them, but you would not be able to really see them well on the screen.
if we were all together, we would be passing around jars of mother, and we would also be passing around little sample glasses of vinegar and water so you could try it. That's what we miss about all being together in one room.
And so these mothers, like a lot of times in my barrels, it will cover the whole top of the barrel, and I try to knock them down because you need air for the acetic acid to work. So if you're doing hard cider, you don't want air in there because the air really encourages the yeast that work to make acetic acid. So these first mothers, they can be that thick. They can be white, they can be really fibrous, they can be tough. But as the acidity level goes up in the vinegar, these mothers tend to sink, and another one will kick in that's able to function at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% acidity. A lot of times when I siphon right out of my barrels, I don't filter it or anything. And so there's usually 10 gallons, 12 gallons left. There's a lot of dead yeast in the bottom, that real brown looking stuff that you'll see in a lot of ciders. And that yeast is actually not that bad for you, but it's so cloudy, and you really don't get this really nice golden look that the cider vinegar has. And if it's pale, there's not much life in that vinegar. You know, it's lost its qualities. So at the end of those barrels, I'll pour them into a vat and I'll cover it. And after about a week or so, you uncover it, and there'll be a mother on the top of that it's like cellophane. You can pick it up and see right through it. So that's how radically different the mother can be. And some micro, what do they call them? Certain people that only eat
macrobiotic people.
Yeah, macrobiotic people.
Oh, yeah.
Will eat this because it's a pure protein. It's like
we will not.
It's like eating a jellyfish, kind of, in a way. You know, if you can handle unusual things, and it's really acidic. I mean, you would want to mix it with something. You know, this vinegar is the only bad thing about it is it can take the enamel off your teeth. That's why you dilute it when you drink it. It's really important that you know, you're not drinking it straight. And I've seen people drink it straight, but
we've never met anybody with discolored enamel from drinking vinegar. But Bob has a brother who's a dentist who tells us that we must caution people to only, when you're taking vinegar medicinally, to only take it in water. The other thing is about the mother. In this bottle, it's very
There's a little.
very clear, and the mother exists even if you can't see it. Some people see the vinegar and they say, I don't see any mother swirling around, so this must be defective. No, it's there, and if you leave this on your countertop, it will get thicker and more visible.
Well, you take the cap off so it can get air and cover it with a cheesecloth.
And then other people say, I'm worried because there's all this webby stuff in the bottom of my vinegar. I haven't used it to cook with or for salads for like 3 months and it's been in my cupboard. Is it still okay? In both cases, there's still mother and it's a-okay. And in all well-made vinegar, mother is present, and that means you can use any good vinegar to make your own vinegar. And Bob can talk about making your own vinegar.
So I keep my vinegars at 60 degrees in basements in the cider building. That's what I keep the temperature at. So it's like 8,000 gallons up there. That's at roughly 60 degrees. And so these colder temperatures means it takes a long time for it to become 5.5%, 5% acidity. I pretty much have a minimum of 3 years that I hold my vinegars before I sell them. This bottle is a 5-year-old. It was 2015. And that's pretty much what I've been selling this year. That was a year that I had 5,000 gallons. And so, you know, some years I might only have 1,000 gallons. I mean, the drought this last year was a terrible year for everything. I mean, this last year was awful, but good year to feed the orchard, a good year to, you know, catch up on everything else you need to catch up on in the fall. So that's pretty much the vinegar process.
How you make it.
Yeah, there's one thing that it is acetic acid. So acetic acid, the one thing you have to be careful of is because of that mother on the top, you've got to get air into that barrel. So you've got to aerate it every once in a while. You can just shake the barrels, you can knock the vinegar down, you know, you've got covers over it so that the air can get into it. But you can get an alcohol imbalance, and that can be a layer of 5 gallons in the middle. And that can smell like acetone. It's just a weird thing. I've talked to 20 different biologists and chemists, and they just say it's just this weird thing. If you aerate it or if you heat it, the alcohol diffuses and it's not a problem. So, you know, I have to make sure that I aerate them so nobody freaks out and says, oh my God, it smells like chemicals.
It's nail polish remover. Should we talk about the food and culinary benefits of vinegar?
Sure.
Not benefits, but uses. So
Yeah.
Vinegar, this is one book, a wonderful book called Vinegar Revival by a guy named Harry Rosenblum that has the Brooklyn Kitchen. He has been coming up to Northport since he was probably 1 year old. And so he has a connection to Maine. And so the Vinegar Revival is a beautiful cookbook with all manner of recipes for fermented foods of all kinds. There's even a cocktail recipe made with apple cider vinegar. There is, believe it or not, a candy recipe made with apple cider vinegar. And this is a book that mentions Bob. And we went to the book signing in Belfast at Left Bank Books, and it was fun because it became partially a conversation between Bob and Harry about this. But so evidently vinegar and vinegar making have become really, really trendy. And there are all kinds of people experimenting in their homes and all kinds of chefs experimenting with making vinegar from fruit scraps, from all kinds of things. So this is just one book. We do have a cheat sheet that we can email to people in the next couple days with some articles and resources, further resources about vinegar. But I'll let Bob talk a little bit about what chefs say to us about why they use apple cider vinegar.
Well,
why they like ours.
I asked the chef at Vinland, I said, you know, what do you use the vinegar in? He goes, I use it in everything. And I said, well, why is that? And he goes, well, it's the food balancer. If something's sweet, it will bring out the more subtle acidic flavors. If it's too acidic, it'll bring out the more sweet flavors. So what it does is it kind of draws out and balances the flavors in the foods. It's interesting. It does the same way to counteract yeast infections. If you're too acidic, it'll make you alkaline. If you're too alkaline, it'll make you more acidic. I mean, it works that way in your body. So it's, and how it does that, I don't know. I mean, but you know, this is the wonderful thing about it. I ran into an old friend at the co-op just the other day, and he says, oh, I love your vinegar. He says, it makes everything taste better. And they're like, well, that's nice. But if you like raw meat, if you're worried about where it came from, just start a marinade with the vinegar. It kills E. coli, it kills salmonella on contact, all forms. If you get food poisoning, I had a fella at a talk at the Common Ground Fair. This guy was like 6'6", 280, wiffle cut haircut. He had like a buckskin jacket on, and I'm giving this talk, and he's sitting there like this, and I'm going, this guy pulling my leg, what's going on here? And at the end of the talk, he comes up and goes, I gotta get me some of that apple cider vinegar. And I go, where are you from? He says, I'm from the county. And I said, well, you seem to know a lot about vinegar. What, you know, what kind of taught you about this? And he goes, well, my grandfather used to say before you went to eat at the neighbors, you better drink my vinegar because you never know what they're going to feed you. And so, you know, this is the old folk medicine that people knew that it would help against food poisoning.
Yeah, so we're segueing, I think, from the culinary into the folk medicine, but
well, it had to do with food. But
yeah, no, it's a good segue. But I think that the most well-known book is by Dr. D.C. Jarvis. I think it was subtitled The Vermont Doctor, and it was about apple cider vinegar, and he used it for many things, but he used it, his book came out in 1958, and it was called Folk Medicine. And he advised pregnant women to drink vinegar tonic daily, and also said it would help with arthritis and destroy bacteria in the digestive tract. And his book quickly sold 500,000 copies and is still in print. He also gave it to all his animals, and we sell vinegar to a lot of people that give it to their critters, particularly chickens and goats. People say that it keeps their critters happy and healthy. It does something, it helps mineralize the shells of eggs, so it's very good for laying hens.
One lady who has goats, she will put the water on the other side of her milking station. And she said the goats will behave.
And add vinegar to
I've
it.
never seen a goat behave, but she said they behave, and her medical bills for her animals, she says it more than compensates what she'll buy 10 gallons at a time. So that's, you know, $200. And she said, it saves me money. And so I mean, I love the feedback that I get from people who use this. I've had people use it for everything from lowering fevers to, it's been proven to help with arthritis.
Acid reflux.
That's huge.
Blood sugar problems. I mean, we usually have and carry, you know, research and site research studies. It can, you know, we won't take up too much time because we're getting to the question. We need to give people time for questions, but there is ample research on the benefits of apple cider vinegar, particularly with conditions like acid reflux, particularly with managing blood sugar.
Yeah. type 1 and type 2 diabetes. It's much more effective with type 1 for lowering blood sugar spikes after you've eaten by drinking it before your meals. Should we go to the questions?
I don't know, we might want to so that people get an ample chance.
I haven't been talking about how the Babylonians used it 5,000 years ago.
The Babylonians used it
BC.
5,000 years ago.
BC.
I mean, in 5,000 BC. Yeah, numbers aren't really my thing.
They made vinegar from dates and all of that. And so, I mean, there's a history that's fascinating. Hippocrates used it. It's been used in the Civil War. Columbus had it for scurvy on his boats. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's great to just look at all the different uses vinegar has. So I guess now, I mean, I just wanted to, it makes me feel good to say all that.
All right. So I'm going to start it off because selfishly, I'm going to start it off if you don't mind. And then folks can unmute or you can put questions in the chat. But Mia and I were talking the other day and I said, yeah, apple cider vinegar does the trick for my acid reflux. But now I have a question for you, because I get store-bought apple cider vinegar. So am I going to notice a difference if I buy your apple cider vinegar? That's the question.
You will be taller and your IQ points will go up about 30.
All right.
There's only one other farm in the country that does cold-aged apple cider vinegar, and they do it for 2 years, and they're sold out.
Wow.
They're always sold out.
Wow.
I refuse to sell to distributors. I try to keep it local. I don't want to be sold out to the people that have depended on having the vinegar.
So if Deborah is wondering if local, why would local vinegar be of more benefit? You're saying because it's you're sure how long it's aged and you're sure the conditions under which the apples were grown?
Yeah, I'm controlling it from the soils up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we've lost a lot of that soils up organics with the USDA organics, and that's a whole nother discussion. I won't go.
All right, thank you so much. So let's just sort of open things up. Please unmute if you're interested in asking Bob and Mia a question, or you can throw it in the chat room. All right, here's your first one. How is this taken for acid reflux? Before or after eating?
Usually before, and usually the standard is a couple of tablespoons in a tall glass of water.
At least 8 ounces.
And people can sip it throughout the day. There's really no wrong way to take vinegar. Some people like to take it in the evening, but in the morning before you start to have any meals is good for acid reflux.
Quiet group. I'm checking. Here we go. That question was from Angie. This question is from Marion. Where can we buy your vinegar locally in Midcoast, Maine?
Midcoast, Maine, you can buy it at the Belfast Co-op. You can buy it at the Good Turn Co-op, fresh off the farm, Rising Tide in Damariscotta. And you can always get it from our farm. Getting it from us directly is cheaper because there's not the store markup. All we ask is that people email a couple days in advance because Bob bottles to order. And if you feel like making the trip to the farm, if it's not apple season and we're not going to be here, manning the store, we often just leave it in our vestibule for people and they just stick a $20 bill in the vestibule and they take their vinegar with them. So it all depends. Sometimes if we're going through town, we'll meet somebody someplace with it. If it's a hike to come out here. It's a beautiful ride, but in the winter, people may want to meet one of us in town.
Yeah, and that's $20 a gallon, not for the
Yeah,
the pint.
a gallon is $20. I
What-
should have said that.
One of the really things that's nice about the vinegar is that it binds the toxins. So let's say you've got a bad case of the flu or a really bad cold and you're feeling really drained and you just need to get this stuff out of your system. You can do a detox bath. And that's like 2 cups of the vinegar, a cup of Epsom salts or sea salts in a tub as hot as you can stand it. Get in it for 20 minutes, drink a quart of water, get up and go to bed. And it will literally diffuse toxins out of your body. And you'll just sleep for like 6 hours really soundly and feel a heck of a lot better.
That's fabulous. While we're waiting for other questions, can I put your email address in the chat for people? I'll type that in.
Sure, it is, and I see a question that I can answer too, but it is farmer@sewellorchard.com, and that's SEWALL, farmer@sewellorchard.com. And we'll be happy, I will be polishing up that sort of vinegar cheat sheet with it's just sort of a 1-page summary of a lot that we've said tonight and some resources. Someone just asked, how long will a gallon of vinegar last? It depends on what you're using it for. If you're gonna, use 2 cups at a time in a detox bath, that's different. People that just are sipping 2 tablespoons a day, that will, it can last a good long time.
Yeah, if you're just cooking with it and taking a couple tablespoons in an 8-ounce glass of water a couple times a day, especially in the heat when you need your electrolytes up, it's a great boost for that.
Last a couple months.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
definitely a couple of months.
My hairdresser uses it too in her rinse. When she does the shampoo and then the conditioner, and she does a vinegar rinse, which restores the pH of your hair back to its natural balance.
One of the things that the vinegar does for arthritis is that it won't cure arthritis, but it impedes it. As you get older, your cells in your body start to crystallize and they lose their elasticity. The vinegar helps to maintain that. So, as your skin doesn't bounce back the way it is, that can be dehydration, but it's also the cells in your body are starting to crystallize due to age. And the vinegar definitely has a great effect on that. I mean, I'm 70, I kept bees, so that's anti-arthritis also, but I hardly have any arthritis at all. And I've beat my body. I've definitely have not been easy on it. A lot of broken bones, a lot of broken fingers, and they still work, really, really well.
At the Common Ground Fair, people used to say to us, people that didn't already drink vinegar themselves, you drink vinegar? And I would always say, yes, and I am 80 and this is my dad. They go, okay, I guess I'll try it, one of the $6 bottles then.
We have snake oil too, but, if anybody's interested.
That's great. All right, so we have a couple questions. This is fascinating. I love it. So Marianne is asking, so that means it does not spoil, ? How long is it considered, quote, fresh or effective?
That's a great question. It does not spoil. It just gets sort of deeper and richer in flavor. And the best thing is, especially with a gallon, you do not have to refrigerate it. You can leave it in a cupboard, or you can leave it, we leave ours on the counter, and it will get, if somebody puts theirs in a cupboard for 4 years, they're going to find a very dark fermented vinegar with a lot of mother in the bottom and a lot of webby looking stuff in the bottom. It's still delicious. It cannot spoil.
Yeah, the older it is, the better it gets.
Like
I
people.
have some 12-year-old vinegar that, is just delicious. I've actually had some Madeira vinegar from 1887 that it's $250 for 2 ounces. I just sampled it.
Modena, yeah.
I'm dyslexic, so
the
words elude me
balsamic.
sometimes.
That's okay.
Yeah, the balsamic vinegar. So it's it only gets better.
Excellent. All right, Angie's
question.
asking, can it be used for salad dressing too, or is it more
Perfect.
medicinal?
Perfect for salads.
It's really good for salad dressing.
Really,
Alright.
I have people that, you know, love it on fiddleheads. You name it, asparagus, any vegetable, you can just try a little bit, just put a little bit on, you know, you can dilute it some, or you can just use it straight, but in a vinegar, for a salad dressing, you'd use it straight.
Well, you put, sometimes you'll make a vinaigrette with oil.
Right,
you
with
know.
the oil, but I
yeah.
mean, you won't dilute the
Oh,
vinegar
right,
for that.
right. Bob is a great baker. He makes beautiful apple pies. And he always adds apple cider to the pie, but he also adds like a little bit of vinegar, which just brings out the flavor in a really interesting way. So that's so interesting to think that it can just heighten and deepen the flavors of whatever, even if it's something sweet and not savory.
Okay. And Heather's asking, what is the dosage for arthritis?
Well, again, just 2 tablespoons, an 8-ounce glass of water in the morning, and you can keep one by your bed at night. It helps if I get a lot of leg cramps at night, and it's nice to have a glass of vinegar water next to the bed, and it will kind of shock me out of it.
It's also really good for the skin. Often people keep vinegar with cotton balls and they will just go over their skin with it. It takes the red and the sting out of sunburn. It sounds counterintuitive because vinegar is acidic, but it actually, if you get a sunburn and you just wipe down with a cold cloth with vinegar on it, it'll take the sting out, take the red out. We talked to somebody who had a spider bite from a brown recluse spider, and those can kill you in some circumstances. And it takes away the sting and the poison often from bites too. So it's a great thing to have. It's an all-purpose thing for cooking, for cosmetic, for the inside of your body.
I've had lobstermen who you get a lot of cuts on their hands, and they use it because it really helps the hands to heal. It's antiseptic, but you'll heal a lot faster. One of my farm workers shot himself with a nail gun in the palm of his hand, went about an inch in. And he asked me, he said, would it be good to put a hypodermic in? So I did 2 cc's. I got about a half an inch in there and injected the 2 cc's, and he danced really well. But like the next day, it was pretty much starting to heal over. And I told him to break it open, you know, so to make sure it heals from the inside out. But he had no pain, and he worked, you know, the next day, no problem.
All right, just wondering if
I like playing doctor sometimes.
Oh, anybody else? You're welcome to unmute and talk as well.
Somebody's gonna unmute.
We make schnitzel in the summer with vinegar and ginger and honey. And it's so refreshing in a hot day. It's really, I don't know, we love that.
Yeah.
And we'll try it with your vinegar now. We'll go find it.
I think that was invented when people used to be haying, which is such hot, bothersome, sticky work. And I think
I
that
read
they used
that,
to
yeah.
use that. And also people are really into making shrubs. There's this great woman, Kathy Langelier, who's in Union, and she has Herbal Revolution. And she has just come out with, she wrote a chapter in Rosemary Gladstar's book on vinegar, on fire cider rather, and she mentions Bob in that, but she's just come out with her own book. I haven't seen it yet, but she makes a lot of shrubs, and shrubs are a beautiful drink made with fruit juices and vinegar. So she has a rose petal shrub, which is absolutely delicious, a blueberry shrub, and a white pine shrub.
No,
And these
okay.
are
Did we
sold a
buy a
lot
shrub?
at local health food stores. And you can add them to cocktails and have really exotic, cool cocktails, or you can just put them with sparkling water and have them. So shrubs have become super trendy too, and a lot of different chefs and bars and restaurants are making their own shrubs, and people can make them. They're easy to make.
And we have a lot of herbalists who make tinctures with the vinegar when people can't drink alcohol or use that in the tinctures. So that's an alternative. You know, you can infuse anything in vinegar, a couple hours in sunlight, and essentially any flower or essence that you want to extract will be infused in that vinegar.
Just give it another few seconds to see if anybody else has any other questions. Heather's saying, thank you, wonderful meeting you both, super presentation.
Thank you. We
Thank
really
you for
look,
having us.
we really look forward to the time that we're all together once again, and we can be walking around with a tray of tiny little cups of vinegar and water, and people can try it and try the shrubs and things like that.
Mhm.
Oh,
Thanks so much. Ready to do some Christmas shopping.
thank you,
Yes.
Angie.
Yes, I wrote that email down myself. All
Thank you.
right, so I'm going to just conclude, but certainly if you have lingering question, go right ahead. I'd like to just finish up by saying that this concludes our presentation for this evening. All of us at Vose Library, thank you for attending our Zoom with Vose Wednesday series. And we hope that you'll spread the word and join us next week for that presentation with author Anne Britting Olson. And thank you, Bob and Mia, and everybody. Good night. Be well and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thanks so
Deborah.
much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Oh, we're going to stay after with
Yeah.
Deborah.
Yeah, I'm going to stop recording.